I prepared this presentation before Ethereum-Warsaw, and I've been going to lectures all around like since the morning. And I think if you follow the mass adoption route, some of the design topics, brand partnerships, etc., you will see some of the concepts either re-emerging or being maybe repeated. But I think it's a good way. So it proves me right that it works. Like this approach works. But I really might have fooled you because I used all the buzzwords in the name. So, you know, AI, Web3, all those sexy things. And really, I think this presentation is something more. So it's more than Web3. And I think it's the second most non-technical presentation. The first one being the great one about branding before, like done by a guy called, I think, Dennis. It was a great presentation. But it's more of a cultural approach to technology than about trends, right? So first, a little bit about me. So I work at G2A. I'm their strategists and insights person. I co-host a podcast. I'm advisor to Third Unit, a startup that tackles the things around IP management. I publish some stuff, some essays on my webpage, Net3 Pop, and I contribute to Kiwi News. Yay, great community. Both the founders of Third Unit and Kiwi are here, so if you want to like meet some cool founders, hook them up. So basically, a month ago, I was sitting in the forest. I'm from a lovely town called Gdynia. It's surrounded by forests. So I was thinking about the presentations and technology, blah, blah, blah. All those nice things you do during vacation time, which you shouldn't do because you should relax on vacation time, logically. And then this came out. I don't know, anybody read it? No, okay, great. That's even greater. So this is a piece done by Jonathan Lai. He's general partner at A16Z, so you probably all know, huge investment fund. And while the whole text is great, it's very inspiring. It goes in depth, and I have a great respect to Mr. Lai. I wouldn't be myself if I wouldn't like dissect it. So for me, it was like the first thing I was reading it, and I was like, okay, it's very one-dimensional, like IP creation, so intellectual property, cannot only rely on generative NI tools, which also was pretty much interesting for me because if you know what A16Z invests in, it's also Web3, so there was no like mention of Web3 whatsoever. I also know that it's an investment fund, so they have to have a thesis, their content is built around it, etc., etc. Still, I was a little bit hurt. Again, discoverability, a very hard word to pronounce, is uber hard. And I think it's going to be harder with AI and more distribution channels. Another thing was that it was a very tool-oriented approach. And I don't think tool-oriented approach, generative AI in this case, is enough. On the other hand, world building is not enough at some point also. So you need something more. And what also struck me, where in all this is the consumer? Like there was mention only of the content, right? And where in all of this is the consumer? And do we really need another Pixar? I think I know everybody are 18 in this stage. Like we're very young. We love Pixar stories, etc. But do we really need to iterate on the past? Like maybe there's something more. And I basically think it's time to think differently and experiment with IP management and pop culture creation. So I don't think there was any talk about pop culture and like nerdy stuff around Ethereum-Warsaw, but I think many of the concepts that were presented here, either mass adoption or brand design, etc., is very much aligned with this concept. So I think it's also a time in which we need a holistic approach and a really stellar signal to noise ratio. I think all of you who are like consuming content, as much content as I do, really know what I'm talking about. Like signal to noise is crucial. And the last few years have really been crazy. There were many more trends, buzz, tools, and projects more than ever. Like we've all been there. Like Web3 was here also. And fun fact, when I was telling my friends at work that I'm coming to Ethereum-Warsaw, they were like what? Web3 conference? Is this still a thing? Like NFTs are dead. Still, we are all here. And I think this all happens in a really good way. People, and me included, are tired, confused, and have no idea how to approach all of this. It's really tiring. So one day, after being bombed by, I think, 100th newsletter on AI, 100 think like different analysis on game development, some turmoils in entertainment, and after I think a talk with my friends who are working in UX research, I just sat and just came up with this. So a little bit of a framework that helps me to put all the concepts together and to like match them. This is a rough draft, so it's only to prove a point that everything is connected, and you should think of it like not each of these concepts does not exist without the other. So hence my point before about the Lies article about like the very AI-centric approach. So again, rather than thinking at every trend and point as a separate trend and tool and like not seeing the connections, I try to connect them as much as possible. And it really, I think I'm a smart person in a way, but I'm really about asking the right questions rather than only giving answers. And I think this approach of like merging things and connecting them really helps. So basically, to give you an example, like very academic one. So these are a couple of trends I just wrote down, and I try to like explain what I was going with it with my composable culture approach. Note to you, this presentation will be available on the internet later, so you don't have to like screen it, etc. Or just hit me up, I will send you the link. We had the NFT craze, and like thinking about NFTs and thinking about all this is like, we have to think how to create a valuable IP around the concept. Like NFTs are great, but we've seen projects fall and like, you know, being born and like either fall or did not meet expectations. I think we all know what I'm talking about in this room. And I think it's also important to create an ecosystem, viable ecosystem around these assets. Of course, you don't have to do it. Like you just can like put out NFTs and like let users do what they like. For example, this happened to a project that I really like called Loot. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but it was really awesome back in the day. And there are many other questions like to this. There are other trends that I wrote down. Of course, AI tooling. So I'm a huge fan of AI tools, but I see that there's a whole time waster of people just testing another tools rather than focus on problems to solve, right? So why go in this like bandwagon when you can just like put it to use? Of course, we have to think how people will benefit from using these tools. Will the projects that we are developing will benefit in any way from like using those tools, etc. The two other trends that I like wrote down and like I think that they are interesting. I think that they're benefiting from the composable culture approach is mainly the game industry. So a little bit of what Lai was writing. He believes that it's the best time to build currently in gaming. I'm not so optimistic. Like I'm a huge video game fan, but I don't know if you know, like there are many games being released. I think every year, like last year, Steam have seen 14,000 games being released. So how do we tackle discoverability when we know that each of Steam's users played, I think, 3 games on average each year? So that's a huge problem. How to think about customer research, how to think about product building, how to tackle the discoverability problem. Note, I don't know. If any one of you does, please let me know. I'm really waiting. Do we go for an extra niche, like some roguelikes for 10 people? Or we try to aim at AAA? Some of these questions might seem familiar because you've all seen I think it was mentioned before, but somebody on the stage, I think Paulina or somebody mentioned that gaming should be like the main boost for Web3 adoption. This did not happen, right? So asking many of those questions might be interesting also. The transmedia strategy that I think many of you are also familiar, if not, highly recommend like going into it. So it should be like approach from questions like how are we thinking about world building around different media, like releasing only game or only comic book. I think it's not enough, and like companies are trying to catch on. Does implementing technology X is beneficial for Project Z, right? So this is another thing that I think we have. I don't want to say failed, but wasn't tackled really in terms of like games, etc. So there are many questions and there are many approaches. The last one is like, I don't want to go into deep into it. It's just my personal faith that I'm like trying to tackle my brain around in my free time. So personal digital rooms finally become a thing. How do we tackle that? Do we sell them? Like, do we furnish them, etc., etc.? So this also works like this. But this was like the more academic approach, and I just want to tell you how it works in practice on 2 examples. One is the commerce approach, so it's based on the work I do at G2A, and the other is a startup approach. So this is mostly based on what we're doing currently at 3rd unit. So that's the e-commerce approach. So how I try to think around those different assets, around those different concepts. Imagine that's the first and I think most important thing. All of these concepts are connected. For example, if we do trade campaigns, if you don't know what a trade campaign is in marketing, it's basically doing a campaign around a different, either an event or either around an asset, or something else. For example, if you work in fashion, you know that there are loads of trade campaigns for jeans. Basically, I did a lot of this in my time working in fashion business. But if you're doing it on a new market, you have to think around what kind of advertising formats will be fitting for this kind of campaign. What kind of users? What kinds of users will be the people who will be interested in it? Do we go, again, for the niche approach? How do we build categories around it? And maybe if a trade campaign is built around a game title or even a crypto asset, by the way, we at G2A are a huge fan of crypto assets. So if you're here and you, for example, have or work for a crypto exchange, please let me know. I'll be happy to provide you all the info. We're working on leveraging IPs, right? If it's a game, premiere, etc. So that's the commercial thing. Also payments and security, which is one of our favorite and most challenging ways of doing business. And the startup approach is pretty different. So in terms of 3rd unit, we try to disrupt the market. So we're thinking about entertainment assets more as a fintech. So it's pretty novel. We have a clear plan, but we don't know if the market will we're thinking about the markets in a way I think is pretty novel, because we're not focusing our jobs on the EU or Northern America, which might be pretty controversial looking at all those markets and their values, etc. We're focusing on non-EU markets. For example, when we talk with other founders or with creators, they see generative AI as a threat to their work, etc. And we're trying to build an ecosystem of creator tools. Either for us, we're creating our own IPs, or for people who come and want to work with us, right? So we also see IPs as a loyalty hub. So basically, we see them as loyalty programs 2.0. This is a great promise I thought, talking about predictions, I thought years ago when crypto was going mainstream, that loyalty programs by entertainment brands is going to be the thing for mass adoption. This did not happen, and I think we are entering phase 2, in which it might happen, maybe not on all the markets, but if you're a trend researcher or you have a startup, really it's a trend to follow. And also in terms of licensing, etc. It's pretty interesting thing to dig in. Our ongoing trend research, and I'm not only reading lots of manga comics, but devouring all kinds of entertainment and other things. Education, I think it was very clear in the previous conversation that education is the key, and we also believe in education, not only on software, hardware kind of things, but also novel trends and technologies. And things that are more, let's say, they are more novel to the market. And of course, we're tackling on the creator economy, because I think I'm a big believer in UGC, and if you're following the market, you can see that it's happening. There are many other great, like I showed you like company approach, but there are other great IP examples. So for example, Real Short, it's, if you don't know it, it's my friend calls it Netflix for people with short attention span. Each of the episodes of the series is 1 minute long, so I think if you have a really short attention span, it's for you, but it's a novel way of designing IP and entertainment creation. Frogmage, one of my favorite Instagram-born AI trends. You just get a frog and some funny letters, and it's all there is to create an IP. And it's interesting to see many more of these kinds of creations. And I'm very much interested, how do they go? How do the creators think of like leveraging it? There are also our Web3 darlings, you probably know all of them. And some things, and this is what I also advise you to do. I know we probably are, everybody here are like mainly either focused on Polish pop culture or in American pop culture, but there are other markets. There are markets that have really great series. Anpanman is one of the most popular, if not the popular, children's IP for Japan. I don't know if anybody heard of it before. You can just. It's not only for little kids, so don't be shy. So there are many other IPs around the markets that are really great, and are interesting to. It's interesting to see how they are being developed. And basically, that's it. It was like a short talk to end of the day, and to make you a little bit think. If there are 3 key takeaways I can give you, this will be bit tech agnostic. I did not mention Web3 on purpose. Web3-centric thinking may kill you. Can make you less attractive, but it's okay if you want to do it. But think about other technologies, how you can implement it. Think further and connect deeper. So this was what I was telling you about. Connect the dots, make it work. And I think the last point, and I think this is what I'm telling myself every day, trends are awesome, but just don't get lost in them. We all know how bandwagoning ended for many of the companies. Seconds of silence for them. There will be such cases when generative AI and many other technologies use the hype, but think outside it. I think in the long term. And one more thing, it's Web3 solutions can be backend of many of these projects. So like, I'm not talking about ditching Web3 altogether, but use it smarter. Don't wait for mass adoption, create mass adoptions yourself. And if you want to contact me, you get the presentation or ask something, I'll be here today and tomorrow. And just, I think it's everything. So thank you very much, and have a great Ethereum-Warsaw, everybody. Thank you. Any questions? Or if you're too shy, you can just, no questions. Thank you. He's done.
Hey. So you said that there was this narrative that Web3 gaming will drive mass adoption, and it hasn't happened, and I agree.
I was a big believer.
Me too. And I'm wondering if you see any potential projects that you think could, in this 1 year, maybe 2 years, or whatever the time frame, could be really the games that we are waiting for.
The problem, maybe not the problem, but I don't see any projects, and it's not because I don't want them to succeed. I just think Web3 gaming became just Web3 gaming. Because like, if you asked me 3 years ago, I would say that Web3 gaming will be, either a part of PC gaming, mobile gaming, or console gaming. The same happened with mobile photography. So people were like doing this division of, oh, there's photography, but there's photography done with phones. It was a huge thing like back in the day, and it didn't happen. So I think Web3 gaming will be just Web3 gaming. I don't see any projects. Maybe I'm wrong. That will. I'm talking about like Web3 centered projects. I don't see it. But on the other hand, it's a niche. And I think it's cool that Web3 gaming carved its own way, right? Because we've all seen blockchains that were game-based, like Harmony back in the day or any other, right? So I think currently we have like traditional gaming that you can, divide PC, console, mobile, etc., and you have Web3 gaming. And this is also interesting from the point of view of game design, etc., etc. And a little bit adding to this, do I see the potential of Web3 gaming coming back in the mainstream as it did back during the Axie Infinity era? Predictions suck, basically, and currently I don't have any views on that. I don't think so, maybe in Asia. But on the other hand, if you asked me 3 years ago, I would say, yeah, it will be like huge thing in the 3 years. Lost a lot on the tokens then. Thank you. Any other question?
What do you think? I've seen a few projects that are actually releasing their own, like even consoles to play the games with. And would you say it's just like another scam where they sell a product that they base all of the rewards from, or is it actually something that we would need like a PS4, PS5 for the Web3 gaming, or do you think it's gonna be more the other way where the games will be adapting for the infrastructure that we already have? Because I think, in my opinion, there is some space for like Web3 based games, and I think there's going to be some implementation where it's like an open market source. But which way do you think it's going to go? Is it the consoles adapting for Web3 or Web3 games adapting for the consoles that we already have?
That's a very good question, and I have to go in deep. So I've been a gamer for 30 years, and it's the last 2 years or the last year has been very interesting in terms of hardware, because it's the first time I'm not putting a bet on any of the consoles. Usually, like back in the day, it was like Super Nintendo or you choose PlayStation, etc. Now I see companies going for the infrastructure, and this is a strategy Microsoft plays on. So they're creating the whole ecosystem of like, I think with the acquisitions, right? So they acquired Activision Blizzard, etc. So I think they're going more for the infrastructure, while you have, for example, console like Nintendo that is very hardware oriented. Nintendo is like there's this joke that Xbox and PlayStation are fighting, and you have like just Super Nintendo, like Nintendo, like looking in the back. Like the browser question is very interesting, because I remember researching browser games, I think 3 years ago. And the country that was very much into browser games was Germany. And it was, I don't know why. If anybody knows the answer, please let me know. And on the other hand, I see a little spike in browser gaming, so maybe that's the way. Okay, this is a very long answer. I don't think there should be a hardware connected with Web3 gaming and done exclusively for Web3 gaming. I think companies like Valve with Steam Deck or Logitech should open their eyes a little bit and make Web3 gaming one of their selling points, like the easiness of playing games on the run. Because we also see at G2A, we're doing lots of research. We see the rise of like handheld PCs. So I think I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I see that handheld PCs might be the way, or even handheld consoles, Nintendo excluded, because I don't think this I can bet on. They will never enter Web3, not in a million years. So.
And to follow, because you said that your opinion changed throughout the past 3 years. So really, if you could just break down like a few main points, why did you, I wouldn't say like completely lost the belief in Web3 gaming over the past 3 years, other than obviously the market conditions, but also I think that gaming industry in general can only reach like a certain ceiling before we really have to break into some really new infrastructures and options, like actually diving into the games. With you saw what Apple came up with the Vision Pros and everything like that. So do you think is it gonna be a constant race between kind of the two industries, the normal games and the Web3 games, or will they eventually like collide and just keep going together? And also, on my first point, why did you stop believing in them so much?
Because token goes up. Basically, many of the projects I followed were good projects, but many of them were token-based. And in the beginning, I was a huge fan of like the Axie Infinity economy, etc. It was for me an intriguing way of taking monetization and microtransaction to a new level. So these are the games I'm not play because I play really boring games. You wouldn't play them, but for me as an analyst, the games that are based on microtransactions and all kinds of data are the most interesting to analyze. So I also thought, first thing, many of them were token based, and all they acquired the player through the let's call it I'm looking for the English word. The promise of the token price or the asset price. So that was my I think biggest regret. And the other thing was that I believed that in the 3 years we'll see a game. Considering game development, I know it's like game development. It's not like that. It's a very hard process. On the other hand, we've seen in the past years successes of such titles as mainstream, normal Web 2 or like traditional games, successes of projects like Vampire Survivors, the most addictive game of all time. Don't play it, really don't play it, or Flappy Bird, etc. So these were the games that didn't, take hundreds of millions of dollars to make, like for example G2A 6, right? So I thought that in the builders pool, because so many great people came into this space. I also worked for Outlier Ventures as a game analyst, and I saw like really great minds like going into, and nothing like this happened. So I might be wrong. You can prove I'm wrong, but this was also something that I said, And maybe the other thing that was very, but I'm talking about like a person from working as an analyst for an accelerator. There was very little of novelty in it. So I've seen, I think, 100 pitch decks of Pokemon clone, 200 pitch decks of a Fortnite clone, and another 100 of Counter-Strike clones. So most of the games that I've seen were, as I was saying, like iteration of some old concepts. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I was also looking for, this is why I mentioned loot. I don't know if you know it. It was like you only had the assets and you had to build the whole world around it. And I thought that loot will be the thing to like make the nerds go into it, like in the mainstream. And it also did not happen. So it's a very long answer to your short question, but this is why I didn't lose my faith. If you know any games that are interesting, please let me know. I will be happy to like look at them. So
what do you think needs to really happen for the Web3 games to really take off?
What really needs to happen is, for example, my gaming friends, because of that's another problem, the PR. My friends who are gamers, who have been gamers for 20, 30, 40 years, when they hear Web3 or NFT, they just go, this is bullshit, like we don't want to do it. So I think it's either rebranding to digital assets or something else, or maybe making, maybe one of the main companies like Valve or something should implement Web3 solutions into their ecosystem. Roblox, I know, it's trying to do something like that, but with Roblox, the problem is that they have very young audience. I think the average of Roblox users is 13 years old. 13 to 15 to 16, I think. So this gives you loads of problem with regulations. And again, trying to end my question, I think Web3 should tackle the younger audience because they're very interested in different formats. They like experimenting. I see it with my friends' kids. Like they love novelty. But again, I see a problem with regulations coming because I also thought that maybe Web3 should go in a way of loot boxes, etc., etc., etc. But we all know how it worked out. So, thank you for great questions. Thank you very much.